Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and we have a special guest today, my dad.
Hey guys.
Who is the professional bearing packer. Today we are working on trailer brakes, so let's see what we got. So for those of you wondering why we have a professional bearing packer, when we have this handy dandy tool right here, is because it is not working the way we want it to. What ends up happening is we will put the bearing in, and let's see, where are the bearings? There. We'll put the bearing in, like so, and because it's hard to keep it centered, there's not a good seal around the top, so it'll end up like this, and then grease will come out the side instead of in the bearing. So we'll get about halfway through the bearing, and then it'll just start coming out the top. So that's why we have a professional ball bearing packer.
Second generation. My dad was first. My dad taught me this on a 72 Malibu.
So do you want to explain exactly how you're doing this?
Yeah, let me get another one. So get a palm full of grease. It's pretty high tech. Grab your bearing. And you can see where there's a bigger gap here on the bottom than there is on the top. So basically you're just putting grease in there until it comes out the top. So if you'll watch a minute, you can see it start coming out the top. Starting right there. Kinda, that one's not very good right now. Yeah, so you can see the grease start coming out through the top. So do that all the way around. And as far as my dad told me, that means your bearing is packed. That's it.
There are a couple other things on the market instead of this one that we would recommend, but they're a lot more expensive. There's one where it looks like a cup, and you put grease on it, and then you smush it down into the bearing. That one might work better than this because it's quite timely. But let's move on to how we do our wheels. There's a couple of things that you're going to need in order to put your trailer brakes back on, and that includes grease, a grease gun, cotter pins, a small block of wood, a hammer, channel locks, grease seals, a bearing packer or a father, and gloves. We are actually not using gloves, but I would actually recommend gloves. And here are some of the steps that you are going to end up taking. The first thing you have to do is repack the big bearing. Make sure that you do it, keep packing it until you see the old grease come out. So as you can tell, our new grease is red. So we are packing it until you can't see any more black. And it's going to be all pink and red. Second thing you do is you put the new brake assembly on. And our brake assembly looks like this. So how do you tell which one's left, which one's right? Great question. We had to look it up. If you put the magnet on the bottom, and this little arm is called the actuator arm, that's the part that moves. If it is on the left going down, this is a left-hand brake, which means it's driver's side. Whereas, oh no, I'm going to get copyrighted because of the music in the background.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. That's funny.
You have to have country music when you're working in the shop. It's a rule.
I said by dad. I prefer rock music.
Nope.
If the actuator arm is on the right, like this one, it is right-handed, which is passenger side. So there you go. So step number 2 after you pack the big bearing is you put your brake assembly on. There's all different types of brake assemblies. There's more than just 4 pins. I think it goes up to 8 pins. There's also different types of spindles. This one is a tapered spindle because it goes from big to small. There's also straight spindles that just go the same length. This spindle in particular does not have a Zurich fitting, so I do not have a way to push my grease into my area where my bearings are going to be. But step number 2 is putting your brake assembly on, and that is just held on with 4 bolts and some nuts on the back side, and then I just tightened it in a semi-like counter clockwise cross way, because if you go this way, I feel like you're going to be doing that forever instead of there, 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 making sure it's nice and tight. Next, make sure you clean off your spindle before you even put that on, actually. This is how it looks when I take the assembly off. Super greasy, and we do not want any old grease, or any new grease for that matter, to be on our brake assembly. So make sure you clean off your spindle first. And this is what it looks like. So you can see that the bolts go into the holes there, and then just screw on from the back side. Okay, the next step is to put the big bearing in. So this is technically the inside of the trailer, and this is the outside of the trailer because it goes on like this. So when you put your big bearing in, you want to get some grease on the inside of the channel, inside of the wheel hub.
Drum, maybe.
Inside,
yeah, hub.
Well, inside of the hub, I guess. And your big bearing, the small side goes to the outside, and then the big side goes towards the inside. So you're actually going to be putting small side down. And then the next step is to put your grease seal in. You do not use grease seals. So the inside where there's a groove is going to go on the inside like so. And then get a piece of wood and a hammer and your hammer, and you are going to hit this until it's flat and flush on the lip of here. So put it on and give it a good whack. Like that. And then run your finger across it and make sure that it's nice and flush, and that's how you put your grease seal in. Alright, after you get your grease seal in and your big bearing in, make sure that your drum is clean. If you have brake cleaner, I would use it. I think we use starter fluid. But what I'm looking for is just to make sure that the outside here is smooth and it doesn't have insane grooves or anything, because that would mean I'd have to replace it. Make sure that the holes where the bolts go is not impaired by your brake assembly, because that would mean you also have to buy a new drum. So my spindle is clean, I got my brake assembly on. Next is put your drum on. Like so. Next, your small bearing goes in. The small side goes towards the center of the trailer. Big side goes out. Like so. There we go. Okay, next is a flat washer. Goes on the back side of that small bearing. It's got a nice groove here, so it has to match up with your spindle. Like so. And then your castle nut. So before you put your castle nut on, make sure you know where your hole is for your cotter pin. Mine is on my left side here, and it goes horizontally through this way. So I'm going to finger tighten my castle nut. The castle part goes towards the outside of the trailer, the flat part goes towards the washer. And I'm going to tighten that till it's hand tight. And then I'm going to tighten it just a little more with channel locks. There it goes. And then I'm going to back it off until I can see the hole where my cotter pin goes. Right there. I am using 1/8 by 1 1/4 cotter pin. You can use longer cotter pins if you want to get it all the way through the hole. I think these are fine, so, and it goes all the way, so I'm going to use them. Here. Comes out the other end. And then I'm going to back off my castle nut just a little bit more. Like that. Take your channel locks and bend your cotter pin towards the outside of the trailer. Like that. Next, I would make sure that your brake and wheel spins. If you feel a little bit of tension or grinding, that's just the brake pad. It's new, it's going to grind a little bit. Just make sure that it's not catching a lot. The new brake pad will eventually wear down just a little bit just by driving, and then it'll be just fine. If you have to adjust your castle nut because it's too much grinding or not enough grinding, go for it. I'd rather the castle nut be tighter so that I'm not getting any wobbling in my brake assembly. Alright, in order to finish up this wheel, we're going to put our cap on. And I want to do some light hammer taps all the way around until this edge goes to that edge. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do is make sure to test my wheel. So what I've got is a battery charger and I set it to 12 volts. So there it goes. On the back side is my brake wiring, and I'm just going to connect my 2 leads to it, like so. And right now it's off, so I should be able to spin the wheel freely. And then when I plug it in, you can also hear it turn on. And now I can't move it. So I know that my brake system is working. And once again, here's it off. And here's it on. Great. Alright, so I wanted to show you guys how these brakes actually work. Right here is a big magnet that when your brakes engage, it hooks onto this part of your drum, and that moves the actuator arm out, and it moves your brakes. You can see that. Oh no, what did I do? So the magnet hooks on here, and that pushes your actuator arm out, and that moves your brake pad out. Hope you guys can see that. So another way to test it is I have my battery tender hooked up right now, and as you can see, it's not magnetized at all. But when I turn it on, there it is.
you go.
So you can tell that it is magnetized. Once again, this is off. Nada. And this is on. And off. Alright, let's get to the rest of it.